Guys, this is the 21 Volkswagen ID.4. It's Volkswagen's first, that's a fun one to say, Volkswagen. If you want to say it correctly, it's Wagen, Volkswagen. It's their first all-electric crossover. They have had a all-electric vehicle before, the e-Golf that was sold just in California that is now discontinued. This is their like wave of the future, their EVs. To start, first we don't have Brett Adams manning the camera today because he's on a road rally with his performance shop that he works for. So we've got JD Melnick, who is the editor for this channel. So say hey, JD. Say hey, JD.
Hey, JD.
Now say it with the camera on. Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. So JD is manning the camera. Thank you so much, JD, for helping out today. And I wanted to first give two shout outs. The first is to Blake Swan for becoming a patron on the Patreon account, and for Darren Anderson. Blake is at the member level, Darren Anderson is at the co-driver level. Thank you, Darren. Thank you, Blake, so much for your support of this channel. That is the lifeblood. It is an exclusive group right now, but if you want to join these guys in supporting the channel, I would super appreciate it. It really helps me out. So on Patreon, it's MilesPerHr, and YouTube's memberships, you just hit that join button up there. So that's as easy as it is. So that is that out of the way. We've got some questions that were asked on YouTube's community page and on Instagram at MilesPerHr, TikTok at MilesPerHr, same deal. And do we have any questions coming in live right now, JD? All right, then let's start off with the questions that were from Instagram.
Ziv asks, how much horsepower?
Ziv asks, how much horsepower? So, well, I can pop the hood, which is not something you commonly say on an EV, but you don't have a front trunk in this vehicle. You've got the electrical components. The battery pack is in the floor, but the electric powertrain's up here. It's a heavy hood. And it makes 201 horsepower and 229 pound-feet of torque. That's from a 77 kilowatt per hour battery pack and an electric motor. It's an AC synchronous electric motor. And that's sending power just to the rear wheels. There is an all-wheel drive version of this car coming, but right now it's just rear-wheel drive. If you care, it gets to 60 in 7.6 seconds. It's not crazy fast. And top speed's 100 miles an hour limited. So, but that's this vehicle. They're going to have faster versions.
It was, I believe Tuxedo Black Cat
Oh,
asked,
he got out of bed. Thank
Yeah.
you, Tuxedo Black Cat.
he asked, is it kind of like a Tesla?
Is it kind of like a Tesla? It's kind of like a Tesla Model Y. Yes, it's actually directly competing with that vehicle and with the Ford Mustang Mach-E and with the Chevy Bolt EUV, their newest version of the Bolt. So it's competing with all those vehicles. And I can share specs on those cars and how it stacks up if you would like. But do we have any other questions right now?
Old Sue asks, what kind of people is this for?
That's a great question. If you ask Volkswagen, they'll say it's for every kind of people. They're targeting, and Blake asked this question in Instagram, they're targeting not just like EV shoppers, they're not just targeting the Mach-E shoppers and the Bolt EUVs and the Tesla Model Y shoppers. They're targeting like normal crossover buyers because according to Volkswagen, 30% of typical crossover buyers are like willing to make the shift to an EV as long as it has good enough range. This vehicle has 250 miles of range. That's very much good enough. Most people are not driving more than like 60 miles in a day max. And if you're going on a long trip, stagger it with charging stations, whatever. So for your average daily use, 250 miles is going to cut it for sure. So Volkswagen is targeting all of those people. That's who they want to be considering this car. Crossover shoppers, which is so much of the market right now.
Two questions coming in. One from Ed Star asking, front or all-wheel drive? And another, Honest Romero asks, is there a GTI version?
Okay, so thank you, Ed Star, for joining. Ed Star, another patron supporter. Super appreciate Ed being part of this. Ed, the answer to your question is that this one is rear-wheel drive. There is an all-wheel drive version coming. And I like that it's rear-wheel drive, not front-wheel drive. It's a little more fun. And who asked the second question?
Romero.
Romero asked?
Honest Romero, I believe it was.
Okay.
Is there a GTI version? Or
Is
will
there a
there
GTI?
be?
So, VW just released a GTX version, at least for the European market, and that is all-wheel drive, and it makes like 295 horsepower. Whether that one is coming to the US or not, we don't know, but we know an all-wheel drive version is coming to the US, and reportedly, though it'll have the GTX name or not, that one is going to be the all-wheel drive and will have 295 horsepower. So, whether we get GTX or whether we just get the components of the GTX, it's coming to the US in some form or another. And JD, as I'm answering these questions, be sure to like just pan around the car and show, because I could talk all day, but people want to see the car too. And there will be walk around, POV drive, POV night drive for all the for this car coming up on the channel.
Chip asked, how's the interior? There was a lot more words in that question, but I distilled it down to that.
Thank you. Okay, here's the interior. You can take a look inside. As JD pointed out, as soon as he stepped in, he was like, well, this is kind of designed for what you feel like a future car looks like on the inside. Just very plain. Let me hop to the other side. This is the first edition of the ID.4, by the way, so it gets a couple upgrades. It gets a larger infotainment screen, and the panoramic glass roof might be standard, I can't remember. But this one has leatherette seats with, I like this, the ID.4, or the ID is perforated in the seat back. That's pretty cool. But they asked about the interior, and it's really very kind of just conservative with their design. You've got a leather wrap steering wheel, you've got this little 5-inch gauge cluster here, you've got a 12-inch infotainment. It's a 10-inch screen as standard, but this one being the first edition gets the 12-inch. You got cup holders, this area that can slide back and reveal a wireless smartphone charger, and kind of a spot that you can put a big bottle, or you can just take these out and have a larger cubby opening with a couple of USB-C ports. And then in the back,
While you're describing it, Audi fanboy wants to know, is it better than a Jaguar I-Pace?
That's a good question. From a performance standpoint, absolutely not. The I-Pace is so much more fun to drive, really. Like the I-Pace, it makes tons more power and it's more fun to drive. But honestly, the intuitiveness of this vehicle is better than the I-Pace for sure, and it's much cheaper. So yeah, so you got this interior here, tons of headroom with this panoramic roof, and you've got leg room, you got big foot pockets, so it's like 5 adults could sit back here for sure. And without the drive shaft hump right there, you can easily have a middle passenger here, and they still clear on the panoramic roof with the headspace. You can't recline these rear seats though, so this is kind of just the position you have. You can't slide them back anymore. But yeah, so this is the interior, and it's fine. It kind of like checks all the boxes. It's not like flourishy in any way, but it's fine.
Ramen K asks, how does it compare to Volvo?
Good question, Ramen K. So Volvo doesn't actually have any pure EVs. Sorry, I stand corrected. The Recharge, the XC40 Recharge, and what is it, the C40, the coupe version of that one is a pure EV. This has more range as standard, and it's about the same size as the XC40 actually. Yeah.
Honest Romero asks, can you get used to that shifter knob?
Yes, you can. So let's go look at that.
And Tuxedo Black Cat wants the infamous horn test.
Oh, okay. So make sure no one's around. I don't want to disturb anyone.
Sounds like a trumpet.
Yeah, that is a trumpet horn, but it's way better than what was the other? No, okay. So Brett was here last time. What car were we just in last week? The horn sounded so weak. Man, I can't remember what car we were in. This is how bad it is. I do a lot of cars every week, but the horn sounded so weak. That actually sounded like, a respectable enough horn, high enough pitch. It's going to get someone's attention.
Mrs. B's classroom said Genesis.
Genesis, thank you, Mrs. B, my wife. Mrs. B's classroom said Genesis. The G80, thank you, Christina. Okay, so the drive shift thing is actually, it looks strange, but it's super easy to use, and it becomes very intuitive. So you just hop in, and you think, okay, I want to back up. Well, you just pull it back, and then you're in reverse. Well, actually, I turned on the car just now. Now I'm in reverse. But that's just how easy it is. You want to go forward, crank it forward. Now you're in drive. If you crank it one more time, you turn on the regenerative braking mode. So as normal, the car is just going to coast. It's going to decouple the single speed drive shaft and it'll just coast. But if you turn on regen braking, then it will use the regenerative braking system to add energy back into the battery system. And it only has one level of regen braking. So it's not going to be a one pedal drive kind of car, and you don't have multiple stages, so you can't go to whatever you want, customize it, but it is very easy to use. So that's where this thing becomes very intuitive, and you want to go to neutral, you just kind of click it down half a click. So it's all super easy to use. This I found to be the quickest thing that I got used to in the car, for sure.
Audi fanboy wants to know, have you had any problems charging it? And Chip wants to know, how's the range been since you've had it?
Good questions. So, no, had no problems charging it. I have only been charging it in my garage, but I mean, as simple as it is, you plug it into a normal 110 outlet and plug it into the car, and I've been adding like 50 miles of range overnight through that. If you do a 220 outlet, you'll get in just 7.5 hours, you'll completely recharge the battery to 250 miles. And I've been seeing like, it'll give me an estimate of 268 miles when it's fully charged, when the EPA rates it at 250. And I've been seeing that as pretty true. I drove to and from San Diego from here yesterday, and I was still left with 90 miles of range. And that drive is supposedly like 160 miles. So I mean, it's pretty much right on with what they estimate the range of this vehicle is. So it's not giving you an ambitious quote on your range, and you're actually like digging into the range easier, faster. And I was doing a decent clip, and then sitting in traffic, and then doing a decent clip. So not easy driving this at all.
I believe Mrs. B asked either how is it on the highway or is it comfortable to drive in?
Oh, she asked this question because she found it to be very uncomfortable from the back seat. So she was sitting back there with her little daughter, and I completely agree with her. The suspension is pretty darn firm. You're jostling around quite a bit, and you feel the bumps, especially in the back seat. The front seats are okay, but in the back seats, you really feel those bumps.
Someone else asked a question about is the back seat comfortable? So you answered that.
Yeah, so I mean, the seats themselves are comfortable, but the suspension is very, very firm. Did we show the back of the car at all?
No, let's do it.
So, I really like the styling of this ID.4. It's super clean. They like didn't go crazy with anything. They keep it consistent with like the single bar of light across the back and the front, which is off right now because the car is off. The moment you get out of the driver's seat, the car will turn itself off. You can't just like leave it on with the AC going, which is kind of a bummer if you've got someone in the back while you're running into the store or something. Anyway, but super clean back here. I like the design, and it drives small. Even though it's not a big vehicle, sometimes like these vehicles just feel huge. My favorite thing about this is actually the turning radius. I'm going to show you, because the turning radius is crazy.
Before we get into that, Chip wants to know, how's the infotainment?
Infotainment's pretty good. I found it lagged once or twice, but for the most part, it's been pretty seamless. So I like the infotainment quite a bit. The only thing that kind of is a bummer, and I think Blake asked this question on Instagram, is that there aren't really any hard controls for the infotainment. So just let's show this real quick. So like, you've got these haptic feedback buttons here. So I can increase or decrease the temperature just by tapping, or you can hold it and it'll go up more than once. But, and they work pretty well. Sometimes this one might be a swipe. I don't know why it doesn't want to increase the audio in here. Okay, so case in point right here. Sometimes they don't work, and more frustratingly is like if you're driving along, you don't have anything, you can adjust the volume here on the steering wheel controls, but if you wanted to do like temperature on the fly, you have to make sure that you align your finger just right with getting the cooler temperature going, or you have to hit the climb up button, climb it, bring it up, and then adjust the temperature here. There's no like knob or anything to turn to make it really easy. So you do have to get used to this, and even when you're used to it, it's still something that takes an extra like bit of consciousness to get right while you're driving. So that's my only complaint. The infotainment itself though is really quick to use. It's wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is super cool. And you've got a bunch of ambient light settings and all sorts of other fun things in here. So that's pretty cool. And their voice assistant is called the ID system. So you say like, hello ID, tell me a joke. Takes a second.
Oh, my developers didn't teach me that, but I'll give it a go anyway. I couldn't work out how to fasten my seatbelt. Then it clicked.
Okay, so the delivery needs improvement there, right? Like
yeah, and that seems to be the only joke that it
That's
does.
the only joke that she knows. Yeah, we've tried that before.
Yeah.
Only joke she knows.
Couple questions.
Okay.
Full spec price?
So this one, as a first edition, is $45K, but that's before $45,000 before federal tax credits. So you can get a $7,500 tax credit back on that. And the general, like Pro, there's Pro and then first edition. So the base model of this car still has the same range, 250 miles. It costs $40,000, and that stacks up really well with rivals like the Mach-E and the Model Y, both of which are about $40,000, a little more for the Mach-E, and both get less range as standard in those vehicles.
And does it have an autopilot system?
It does, yeah, and that's another great standard feature. So you just hit this button here, and it turns on a travel assistant, they call it. And so it's got adaptive cruise control, lane keeping assist, and it keeps in the center of the lane. And you do have to check in. You can't leave your hands off the wheel forever, but it's a pretty good system, as I've found.
Before your radius test that you're going to show off,
Yeah.
Tuxedo Black Cat wants to know, is it easy to drive?
Very, very easy to drive Tuxedo Black Cat. Like, super simple. Like, as in, like, you get in, you don't hit a button, you just crank this and you're driving. Like, that's as simple as it is. Super smooth. As we'll find out, the turning radius is amazing, so that helps in terms of ease of use on a daily basis. But yeah, very easy to drive.
In the chat, do you guys want to see the turning radius from the inside of the vehicle or from the outside?
I think you should do it from the outside because I want to also let them hear what the car sounds like.
So,
I wish you could see JD's face right now. He's like, seriously, it is so tight. You could just make a tiny little circle in this car. It's crazy. So that is so helpful, considering how much time people spend in parking lots. That right there is super helpful. Wait, let me go quick for a quick second, and I want you to just hear what it sounds like accelerating and then braking, because it makes it. JD doesn't like the noise, but I think the noise sounds fun. What do you think of the noise? Is it like, can you hear it well, or is it pretty quiet?
you can hear it.
JD doesn't like it.
No.
No. He's just like, it sounds too artificial, which, I mean, yeah, it's an artificial noise for sure. But I think the Taycan sounds way better.
Way better,
Yeah.
but also because it's Porsche.
It's a Porsche, yeah, for sure. Okay, if we don't have any other questions, we'll probably just hop in and do a quick drive. Or do we have other questions while we're just sitting here?
Not any. Some came through, but
You can scroll back on them if you missed them.
sounds like a low-key. Oh, there it is. Sounds like a low-key Disney ride. I like that.
Who said that?
Who said that? That is your boss.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
My wife?
Yep.
That's great.
Does it have smart parking features?
No, it doesn't have a smart park feature. This is my license plate cover, by the way. Really exciting. No, it doesn't have a smart park feature. You have to park it yourself. I imagine that's something they could add via over-the-air updates later.
Oh, Chip did ask, how is the infotainment? I think we went over that.
Yeah, I kind of went over it.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's like it's pretty quick. I've only like once or twice had like it delay. Never freeze, just delay.
Jur asks, does this one have eyeball lights?
Does it have the lights that come from the dashboard? Is that what you mean, the infrared sensors? Yeah, it has infrared sensors to detect your attention level. It also has the ID light, which is this system up here. So if I turn off the car and then get out, I may have to sit up for a sec. Are you gonna? There you go. Turns off. Now if I get in and you see the light like come on and do a thing.
Jur wants to know, no, does it have lights that look like eyeballs? Well,
Oh, I don't think so. No, they look.
oh yeah, they do.
Do they? Does it look like it has an expression?
Apparently, it's
Oh yeah, the actual headlights have
Yeah.
like these dimples on them. They
Yeah.
look like eyes. Yeah, that's true. Okay, sorry, I forgot. I forgot they did. I thought you were talking just about the shape of the housing, but no, the actual headlights do have like these dimples on the side. They look kind of cool.
turn off the vehicle because it does a little animation when you turn it on. The headlights.
Headlights?
Yeah.
They do? Okay.
Super cool.
That's fun.
They look down and then they go side to side.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's rad.
Ed Star wants to know, how close are you to a charging station?
So we can find out. Well, actually, so here's kind of one of the failings of this vehicle. Volkswagen actually owns Electrify America, which is a network of charging stations, and they give you 3 years of free charging of those stations if you buy an ID.4, which is actually a great deal. But how you find those stations, you have to have the app, and you have to pull that up, which you can't do while you're driving, obviously, so you have to pull over and pull that up. You can say, hello ID, find me a charging station. And then it'll take a
Search for
second.
charging station in the vicinity.
Okay, so it'll do that.
Please select a POI from
Gives
the
you these options here in the infotainment, but you don't know which of these are Electrify America. So these are just all the charging stations in the area. So we find out there's one just,
Sorry.
we're done, thank you. Just 500 feet from here, actually it wants me to choose one. So this one just 500 feet from here, one 900 feet. We're in an area where there are a lot of EVs, so this makes sense. And then a half mile, like, there's like a
You
ton
can
around
say
here.
a POI or a line.
We don't know which of these are Electrify America. So that's frustrating. So you'd have to check those on an app. I imagine they're going to come up with a software update. In fact, they've said something to this effect. They'll come up with a software update that says, hey, these are the Electrify America stations. This is the capacity of the station. It's just nothing right now is as intuitive as Tesla's supercharger network. It's so easy to use Tesla's network, whereas this is just not. Okay, let's go drive.
Cool.
Put on the seatbelt.
Yeah.
Here, let me hold that.
I think I can do this.
Okay. This is
Someone
fun for me.
asked, when are you going to review the Land Rover, review the Range Rover Sport SVR?
When they have one available, it's a little further back. This is fun for me. I'm just enjoying watching JD struggle. When they have one available, right now it's really difficult to get a Land Rover vehicle because their press fleet is pretty diminished. But let me tell you what, this is a great plug for if you want to become a patron at the team manager level, like Ed Starr did, and he asked for an Aston Martin DBX, and it made it happen. Got an Aston Martin DBX. Even if I have to go to a dealership and get a vehicle, I will do it. If you're a member at that at the team manager level. So, just a plug for if you want to help us out, I'll help you out and I'll get you a vehicle that you're asking for.
Let's see here. This is tough to do while driving.
Mm-hmm. And when we're driving, just go ahead and focus on the road. Oh, is my driver door not closed? All right, that was mine.
Oh, it's definitely not mine.
What other questions we got coming in?
We have, would you rather drive this or a RAV4 CRV?
RAV4 or CRV, most likely, because those are two different models. Would I rather drive this or those two? So, my wife has a RAV4. It's a 2013 RAV4, and I'll tell you what, it has been blissful 100,000 plus miles of ownership because no problems, just absolutely no problems. And I can't undervalue reliability. This is a new vehicle. It's one of Volkswagen's first electric vehicles. We don't know what the reliability is going to be like for this, but I imagine that, you know, in the first few years of ownership, it's not going to give you any problem. This would be a nice way to drive around because it has many more features than the RAV4, at least that we own. A new RAV4 is going to have all the same active safety features, the driving aids and all that stuff. Infotainment's going to be very similar. It's going to have more physical buttons, which I can sort of appreciate. It will have actually more cargo space as well. Not a lot more, but a little more. But you do have to fill it up with gas. So if you don't use your vehicle a ton, more than, I would say, yeah, 50, 60 miles a day, then this is going to suit your need, and I would consider it.
Is this leather real leather or vegan leather?
This is vegan leather. This is leatherette. It's not real leather. The only real leather in the car is on the steering wheel, and it feels really good. The leather on the seats doesn't feel quite as good.
We have a do a 0 to 40 test.
We could do a 0 to 40 at this next light here.
Yeah.
So
Ed
we'll go
Starr
to
mentioned something pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Mustang E, the E version can name the charging stations by name.
That's a cool feature. This one definitely cannot do that, at least yet. Again, over-the-air updates might give you something better. Okay, we're gonna do 0 to 40. 0 to 45, because that's the speed limit. There it is.
Reminds me of my Scion.
Yeah, not the fastest thing in the world. This actually makes more power than your Scion too, but it weighs a lot more. It's 4,800 pounds, 4,600 pounds. So it's heavy. That's what you're gonna get with an EV with a big battery and the floorboard. But yeah, it's not quick. It'll do fine, and you have that instant electric torque, so that really helps. But it's not
Ooh, that's a good question.
not the fastest thing in the world.
We got a question from Peter Gregg.
Okay, Peter.
Yes, I'm gonna read the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Comparing only EV vehicles, which is the most refined, smooth, and isolated from road noise? Thumbs up, Miles. Love you.
Oh, thanks, Peter. If we're gonna compare, let's talk about just this segment. So, Bolt EUV, Ford Mustang Mach-E, Volkswagen ID.4, and Tesla Model Y. The most refined and quiet is, well, this one actually gets a fair amount of wind noise. The Tesla Model Y definitely has wind noise.
That was another question: is could we hear the wind noise on
Yeah,
the freeway?
we'll get on the freeway here in a sec, and we'll definitely show you the wind noise. I might honestly say the Mach-E might be the quietest in the cabin of the vehicles I've driven. This one's fairly quiet, but when you're at freeway speeds, you do hear the wind noise. So I actually would say the Ford Mustang Mach-E. Wild. The Chevy Bolt EUV is also not bad, but the Mach-E might be better. Just in quietness.
There's been a few questions on would you recommend this as an electric option?
Yes, I would. I would recommend it for having the standard range be the best in the segment. You can pay more money in the Mach-E and the Model Y for more range, but the range you get in this vehicle as standard is the best in the segment. So I would say for that feature alone, the interior is totally fine. It's no worse than any of the competitors. I find it better than the Model Y because the Model Y is even more kind of like streamlined, and so you have to like hunt around for everything in infotainment. And the Mach-E's infotainment is fine. I mean, like, honestly, the interior of this is fine. The ride quality is a bit firm. That's the biggest knock I have for it. The range is great as a standard range. You can't get more range for more money like you can in the competitors. I like how it looks quite a bit. So I would recommend it. Yeah.
The Audi fanboy wants to know what happens when you put it up against the Audi e-tron.
The e-tron. Well, I mean, the e-tron is gonna definitely be a quieter, smoother ride. I think that's really the selling point for a luxury version of an electric vehicle. They just put the extra time and effort into sound insulation and ride quality. So I think if you're looking at like the Q4, the e-tron Q4, that's their newest model that has the same platform as this, where the extra money is gonna go is into the ride quality.
Tuxedo Black Cat asks, is this car dangerous to drive if you have a teenager?
Dangerous to drive if you are a teenager, if you have a teenager. I would say not dangerous probably in either regard, but any car, let's answer that question, Tuxedo Black Cat. Any car can be dangerous if you don't know how to drive it, or if you drive it in an aggressive, unsafe way. Any vehicle can be dangerous is the answer to that question.
I asked it a few times.
One thing this vehicle doesn't have while I was sitting at that stoplight that I really wish it did is sort of an auto hold feature, and that's one of the questions that was asked on Instagram. If you still have your iPhone on you, I wanted to like give proper credit.
We also, while I'm looking it up, want to know what drive modes does it have?
So it has these modes here. Hit that mode. It's got Eco, Comfort, Sport, and Custom. If you go to Sport, which we're in right now, it automatically turns on the braking regeneration.
So, what was the question I'm looking at?
You're looking at the question about the auto hold, which, so, we'd have to be stopped for me to show you. That light I'll probably be able to show you.
Mr. Brake hold. This is, oh, from Michael.
From Michael. Michael asked about whether there's a brake hold. So if you go into vehicle in this car, it'll bring up all these different settings that you can change from the exterior to the interior. And one of them is this one that says brakes. If you hit brakes, we have to be stopped. Okay, we have to go now. But it gives you an anti-roll function, but that's just for neutral. There's actually no auto hold in this vehicle at all. So when you take your foot off the brake, it's just gonna roll. You have no control over that. So that is pretty frustrating.
Going to the freeway.
Another person asked how it handles in corners. Does it feel rear-wheel drive? And I think it definitely does. It not being front-wheel drive, there's not the power and the plow on the front tires. So it's actually pretty stable in corners, and having all that weight down low really helps with that. So it actually can be kind of fun in a corner with understanding how much power it has, which is not tons. Okay, so now we're at the freeway. You can hear some of the wind noise that's coming in. It's not enough to really be obstructive or annoying, but it's more than I would like. Again, this is not a luxury electric vehicle, but I feel like the wind noise should be less than this. I can just hear it seeping in. So I can turn on the travel assist now. And so now it's got adaptive cruise control and lane keeping assist. When it detects the lanes, it's detected one lane, both lanes now. Now if I take my hands off the wheel, it'll keep it centered in the lane for at least a few seconds, and then it'll ask you to check in with the steering. So this is all taking a curve, no problems. Now it wants you to take over the steering.
If you were to add options onto this vehicle, which options would you select?
There are not many. There's the first edition package, which I'm sorry, I cannot remember all the things that come with that. I know it's about $4,000. And would I choose that? You get no more range. As standard in this vehicle, you get the fast charging capability, 125 kilowatts per hour, which is actually, that's another really good thing about this vehicle. It can charge in 10 minutes, it can add 60 miles of range. So it's pretty impressive in that regard. So, I mean, if you don't need the first edition niceties that are added, which again, it's like you get a larger infotainment screen and a couple other things. If you don't need those, I would just get the base car. Save yourself this, the $4,000 for the first edition package. Get the $7,500 federal tax incentive, and this becomes, a $32,500 car, which is at that price point, it makes a lot of sense. And that is one thing that this has over Tesla. Tesla's already used up all of their incentives, so you won't get any incentives on the Model Y, but you will get incentives on this and the Mustang Mach-E. I think Chevy has used all their incentives. They may still have a little left.
Drew wants to know, as far as wind noise and isolation from sound, what car is the best one you've driven?
What car in general? Definitely Rolls-Royce. Rolls-Royce crushes it in terms of like isolation in the cabin. Bentley is very good with their Flying Spur and Mulsanne, but Rolls-Royce is just, it's a cut above. It is just so quiet in those things, which is impressive given that they're big blocks, especially the Cullinan.
Saturov, that's about it. Is it good for long trips?
Yeah, so I mean, my wife and I just took it to San Diego yesterday, and the biggest complaint she and I had was that the ride quality was a bit firm. So if you're on the highway, if you're in those grooves on the highway, you hear them, you feel them, and that's the biggest issue I have, because 250 miles of range is a decent amount of range. Find a charging station, fuel up. I think you can go from 5 to 80% in 35 minutes. So that's really not bad. A really long trip, that's gonna get tedious. If you're driving from here across country, that's you stopping, every 250 miles to juice the vehicle back up. And so that's 35 minutes every time you're stopping.
We got a super chat from Ed Star.
Oh, Ed, you're the best.
With 2 people on board, the ID.4 weighs over 5,000 pounds. So here's 50 more for an excellent live presentation.
Oh my gosh. Dude, Ed, you're the best. Yes, it. I love how you did that. I love how you did that, Ed. That's so funny.
Yeah, that's great. And I weigh 406 pounds, so it's really...
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, the vehicle is heavy, for sure. I mean, that is what you're getting with these electric vehicles, and the batteries on the floor. The benefit of having a battery on the floor, as we experienced in that corner, is that they feel very stable, but you can't get around the fact that they're heavy. It doesn't, because of that electric, so it's interesting. If you want to talk about the yin and yang of that situation, it's interesting because you have the instant nature of electric torque. So it doesn't feel heavy in that you can get the car moving in a second, but when you're slowing down, you feel the weight of the car. So it's a balancing act that automakers create, having an electric vehicle. You have the weight, but you also have the instant electric torque, so it gets out of its own way. I think if the car weighed less, the 0 to 60 would definitely be quicker with 200 horsepower, but I'm looking forward to a juicier version, a more powerful version of this vehicle.
A couple questions coming in of which cars you can review next. I think it's a good time for you to plug memberships.
Yes, it is. So guys, at the co-driver level, on YouTube memberships or on Patreon, I give you a 7-day preview of the next 7 days of what cars I have. So you're getting the inside that JD and I share of like, hey, you're going to be editing these vehicles in the next few days. So you're getting that inside scoop.
Basically the editor without the work.
Yes. That sounds great, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sounds great.
That sounds great to him. Yeah, so that's what you're getting. You're getting a 7-day preview of the next vehicles that are coming out. That's just $5 a month, so I really would encourage you, if you want to support, and again, mostly that is supporting the channel. You also get that perk, but it's supporting the channel. So I'm not going to tell you what vehicles I have coming up. I'll tell you, on Monday, we've got the Range Rover review, and all of the Range Rover POV drives and POV rides and walkarounds have now been published by this point. 2 went up this morning. So we know what's coming on Monday, and that's the review. Not going to tell you beyond that unless you become a member. All right, guys. I think that's probably going to do it for us. Thank you guys so much for joining this live Q&A with the Volkswagen ID. Thank you, JD, for maintaining the camera, doing a great job. And my final thoughts on this vehicle are, the range is great. It's very true to your driving behavior. It's not embellished of a figure. The cabin is also like, it has everything you need. The ride quality is a bit firm. There's a bit too much wind noise. That's it. Thank you guys for watching. See you next time.